The dawn did not break with a roar. It arrived as a soft, violet bruise on the horizon that slowly bled into shades of amber and gold. For Maya, a common worker ant in a colony of thousands, the morning was a ritual of survival. As she emerged from the cool, damp tunnels of her ancestral hill, the world greeted her with its overwhelming scale. To a creature less than half a centimeter long, a single dewdrop on a blade of grass is a crystal chandelier, and the morning breeze is a gale-force wind. Maya was not born with the size of the soldiers or the specialized mandibles of the foragers, but she possessed an invisible engine, a quiet, flickering light of determination. On this particular Tuesday, she wandered further than usual, her antennae dancing in the air to catch the chemical signatures of the earth. Then she saw it. Resting in a patch of parched gray dust was a grain of wheat. To a human, it was a speck of waste left behind by a harvest. To Maya, it was a monolith. It was golden, its surface etched with rough ridges that caught the early light, making it look like an ancient, immovable boulder dropped by the gods. Chapter 2. The Voice of the Void. Maya stood before the grain, her heart, if ants feel such things, tightening. A cold shiver of doubt, a universal instinct shared by all living things, rippled through her. A small, treacherous voice inside her whispered the words that have killed more dreams than failure ever has. This is too much for you. The voice of logic told her to walk away. It argued that her effort would be a drop in an infinite ocean. It suggested she find a smaller seed, something more suited to her station in life. But Maya did not move. She felt a pull, not toward the food itself, but toward the sheer audacity of the challenge. She realized in that moment that the size of the obstacle was merely a reflection of the size of the opportunity. To leave it would be to accept a smaller version of herself. Chapter 3. The Loneliness of the First Push. She stepped forward, bracing her tiny, segmented legs against the grit of the earth. She pressed her head against the rough hull of the grain and pushed. Nothing happened. She tried again, shifting her weight, seeking a point of leverage. Still, the grain sat as heavy as a mountain. Around her, the world continued its frantic, indifferent pace. Hundreds of her sisters marched past in disciplined, pheromone-guided lines, carrying bits of leaf and smaller seeds. They did not mock her, but they did not stop either. In the pursuit of greatness, the first few steps are the loneliest. No one cheers for the one who is struggling to move a weight that hasn't budged an inch. Quitting began to feel like the only rational choice. It felt easy. It felt safe. But then, something shifted within her spirit. She refused to let the silence of the world dictate the volume of her effort. She planted her feet firmly into the ground once more. Chapter 4. The Millimeter. Breakthrough. Maya stopped looking at the anthill, which was a vast distance away. She stopped looking at the entire grain. Instead, she focused on one tiny patch of dirt right in front of her. She whispered to herself, "I don't need to move it to the hill. I just need to move it 1 millimeter." She breathed, reset her stance, and channeled her entire existence into a single point of pressure. Then, a tiny shift occurred. The grain moved, perhaps only the width of a hair. But it moved. To the universe, it was nothing. To Maya, it was everything. It was the proof of concept. It was the evidence that the immovable was actually just heavy, and heavy things can be moved if one is willing to be patient. She realized that she didn't need to finish everything at once. One push, one breath, and one small step at a time were enough to make progress. Chapter 5. The Discipline of the Mundane. For the next hour, Maya became a machine of pure discipline. Push, breath, reset. The sun rose higher, baking the soil and sapping her moisture. Her body ached. Every instinct told her to find shade and rest. But she understood a secret. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when the initial excitement has evaporated. She fell in love with the process. She stopped counting the distance and started counting the breaths. She wasn't just moving food, she was carving out a new identity, a version of Maya that did not know how to quit. Chapter 6. The Silent Language of Action. As Maya struggled, a scout ant named Kale stopped nearby. He had been heading toward a clover patch, but something caught his eye. He didn't see a successful ant. He saw a persistent one. Inspiration is not often found in speeches. It is found in the raw, ugly reality of someone refusing to give up. Kale dropped his own task and, without a single word of instruction, stepped in beside her. He braced himself against the grain. Maya looked at him, a brief spark of shared understanding, and they pushed together. Then, another ant joined, then another. Driven simply by the shared goal, they formed a phalanx of effort. They turned an impossible individual task into a manageable collective effort. There were no meetings, no committees. There was only the rhythm of shared labor. Chapter 7. The Arrival. The sky softened into a violet and orange tapestry as the sun began its descent. The long shadows made the golden grain look like a rolling orb of light. With one final, collective heave, the grain tumbled over the threshold of the colony's entrance. They were safe. The colony would eat for many days to come. Maya stood back, her body covered in dust, her legs finally trembling with exhaustion. She didn't want a medal or a speech. The reward was the internal quiet. The knowledge that when the morning began with a voice saying, "I can't," she had finished the day by proving it wrong. She stood there exhausted, but smiling. Chapter 8. The Lesson for the Human Spirit. This story is not about an ant. It is about you. Your grain might be a book you haven't written, a business you're afraid to start, or a habit you're trying to break. When your dreams feel too big or progress feels slow, remember Maya. Start small. If the weight is too heavy to lift, slide it a millimeter. Accept the loneliness. Don't wait for a crowd to cheer. The crowd only shows up when the grain is already moving. Teamwork follows. Toil. People help those who are already helping themselves. Your persistence will attract your tribe. Repeat the effort. The tiniest effort, when repeated, can change the map of your world. Don't quit. Take the next small step. Your grain is waiting.